hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Huskies Hockey Podcast. Weldie back from his assignment in upstate New York. Thank you, Andrew, for holding down the fort yesterday for a wonderful show. I certainly enjoyed listening to it when I was out on assignment, and it's no easy task to hold a show on your own, and you did it with aplomb. So thank you so much.
Did it with a plum. I did it with a mango. I did it with a pear. I did it with an apple. I did it with a lot of fruit, and that's what I can give credit to.
I just don't care for mango.
Mango. I just had a mango about 15 minutes ago.
No kidding, really.
I think it's rocketed up the fruit chart for me.
Huh.
I think it's my favorite fruit. I think now.
Really?
Which 5 years ago, I don't know if I've had, at that point, I don't know if I would have had more than one or two mangoes ever. Big fan. Now, they can be hit or miss. They have a tendency to be hit or miss. If for supermarket mangoes, go with Kent mangoes. They're the better ones. Like Tommy Atkins is, I think, the worst of the varieties. So if you can get Kent's, that's what I would suggest.
Kent mango.
And use a glass
really tough
to scoop it out.
Yeah, are they like really tough to cut up or peel or whatever you do with a mango? Like...
Rookies tend to struggle.
Whoa.
Slice the two cheeks and then scoop it out with the glass and then dice to your preference. Very easy.
Interesting.
And very tasty.
All right. Well, maybe that's the thing is that I haven't had like a good mango. I've only had like bad artificial mango flavoring.
Could be. Or again, they can be hit or miss. If there's like underripe ones, the texture's off, stringy, and there definitely is such a thing as a bad mango. But I think once you've ran into a good mango, you'll never turn back.
You'll never turn. Okay, Kent mango. If you want to sponsor this segment, Kent mangoes.
Yes.
Kent's mango.
Well, it's like a varietal. It's like Honeycrisp apples or like Gala.
Okay.
It's the varietal of mangoes, not a brand name per se. But
gotcha.
Of the supermarket varietals, that's one of the major ones.
Okay. Well,
if you can find like champagne mangoes too, which are harder to find, and they're smaller.
That sounds a little hoity-toity, a little highbrow for my taste.
They're generally cheaper because they're smaller than a larger mango. But those are the best.
Are they
mangoes.
Specifically from the Champagne region of France?
Again, it's a varietal. I don't know exactly.
Okay. Anything else would be sparkling mango is what I'm trying to say.
A little bit creamier taste. It's just perfect. Yeah.
All right. So, as we start the show, as we always do now with the whiskey tasting. And a big shout out to Jason Bryant. Here we go.
So we're talking about whiskey today.
Whiskey.
Oh, fresh off of my email address. Didn't even proof it. I wanted to get on my natural reaction here to our new whiskey sounder. There it is. So thank you, Jason, for putting that together and sending it in.
11 out of 10. No notes.
Yeah, no notes. That was just perfect. I actually decided to put up my chart. So I actually have the rankings. And already I see some flaws in my rankings. I will say that. The clubhouse leader is actually Ireland is the leader. That was the 8-5.
Okay.
That was the high mark. And then coming up tied next was Denmark and Australia. And then last time was Canada. That was the 7-8. And at the bottom was Germany. That was the 5-9.
Something told me that Germany was the leader, but clearly I'm not the most reliable.
I think back to back was Germany and Denmark. And I think because the
Perhaps.
Denmark was the 7-9.
Well, I'm
but
glad that
Germany,
you're
I
taking the
said,
step
should
here.
Stick to beer. Well, I gotta make sure. But I don't like my groupings here with the 7-8, 7-9, 7-9. I don't know. That seems.
Well, you're not going to go and retroactively change your score.
I mean, not without tasting again. Maybe there could be
use it as a guide. As now you're going to avoid 7-8, 7-9. And I think too, if we're on the topic, I mea culpa bungled this bit last week, and so I feel like to make up, you need to do 2 countries this week.
Oh. Well, I'd have to go downstairs and grab my next country, which...
Okay, well, we're not going to do that. But I
can
riveted.
give you a tease of what the next country is, if you would like.
Let's scratch that. I thought the whiskey was readily at hand, but no, you're not that far down in
my bar.
Well, that's good. You've managed to hang on to some self-respect. Where are we drinking today?
England.
Well, toodaloo then. Yeah. Big Ben and fish and chips. What's on the palate? What's on the nose? What are your first kind of notes that you're sensing?
It's very fruity.
Okay,
like
mango?
Almost like mango-ish, if I were to say. So, the reason why I said mango, not a fan, is my wife, for her birthday dinner, we went out to La Casita, because obviously in America, if you have a birthday, you go to a Mexican restaurant for your free meal. And then I learned that La Casita no longer does free meals on your birthday. So that was an expensive trip for kind of not that great of food.
It's a La Casita rug pull.
Yeah,
they probably get a lot of people on that.
Oh no, they said, oh no, it's a free dessert now, and it's like I don't want your cornflake ice cream. No, thank you. But here we go. Here's England down the hatch. That's the nose is better than the taste. There's not a lot to it.
The face you're giving me right now is not one of pleasure.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say it's definitely not one I would order again. I will say that.
Do we got a sub Germany score here?
No, I don't think it's as bad as the Germany one. Okay. So I'm thinking this is like a 6-3.
Okay.
Just again, this is just a lot of nothing on this one.
More on the nose than on the tongue.
Yeah, I mean it tastes really flat all the way through. Not a lot of body to it, so 6-3 is where we're ranking it.
All right, well, plug that into the spreadsheet.
Perfect. I'll plug that in. And
what number is this? How many have we done now? 6, 7,
8.
And how many was the Costco pack? Something like 20, 24. All right, so 24. We're a third of the way through.
Yep, exactly. Well, we got my St. Cloud State math here. Yes, you are correct. A third of the way through. So
a third of the way through too. That's something where one too many whiskeys that becomes a tough one to say. A third through.
A third through. That's how George Thorogood had got his name, actually. Fun fact.
We got like Jason Bryan should give us the key of what are all of those clips of, because I mean I got the Ric Flair, obviously, but I needed to know all of the what all he's pulling from, because it's a great clip.
It's a great clip. I guess what we can use it 16 more times.
Actually, maybe we should. Don't tell us, and maybe week by week we can try to piece together.
We can try to piecemeal it together. There we go. I mean, KVSE Trivia Weekend just ended, and usually their last question involves a clip of 2-minute long, and you have to name like 24 different cartoons or whatever it was that one year.
Well, we'll do our version of it. In memory of KVSE Trivia Weekend. Yeah, let's string this out. It's a bit on a bit. How about that?
A bit on a bit. I wanted, before we get into our 77 or our Brett Larson 77-day dry spell that ended, I wanted to go back to Samantha Zamora's question regarding Sutton Foster, which you handled very well for not being a theater person, by the way.
Thank you.
Asking about which one of her triple threat, which, yes, you did name all three of them: singing, dancing, and acting. Is the key to her Tony win. When I think of triple threat, and maybe it's not quite fair to me, on stage, I look at the acting portion as maybe a little bit not as important.
That's got to be number 3 if we're talking about musical performances.
On stage, I think there is definitely that triple threat aspect
That's why I doubted it. I thought that was, singing and dancing kind of come naturally. Mm-hmm. But as far as what that third skill would be, that was the one that I dithered on. So yeah, I would put it a number 3 in the pecking order. And it sounds like that's correct.
Yeah. So, and that's where, on film, that's where, the stars of like old Hollywood, when you have like, a Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly, that the acting probably meant a little bit more to the being a triple threat, where obviously they had to all three of them because the acting meant, a little bit more in that sense. Rita Moreno, obviously another one. But on stage, I think, the big one is the singing. And I think with Sutton Foster, the singing is the biggest kind of aspect, I think, that puts her above and beyond, because that's not only is that, the pitch wise, but the powerful voice that she puts behind it, I think is what makes it so unique. And especially Anything Goes has some belters of songs. So I think that's what, I think that's the big one that helps her propel her to the top of the list. And when it comes to, you had another question about the best revival. How many times can you win a Tony for best revival? And that's, I never really thought about that. And then Andrew, you also made a point of A Star Is Born, the movie version, which has come out like 4 times now. And, so you can make kind of the same argument. Should you still keep, nominating for Academy Awards the same movie over and over again? And if there's enough changes that you can do to update it, especially like they did with Oklahoma a couple of years ago, I don't think there's any type of limit. And I'm actually looking forward to like when Phantom comes back, and because, that was the longest running show on Broadway and then that close. But Phantom, I think, could use like a little bit of a, I don't know, like what is that? Paddles clear? Like give it a little bit of kind of update it a little bit. Maybe I think there's some tweaks you can do to that and have it come out. And I think the songs are still bangers, but I think there's some changes you can make to the screenplay and even the story a little bit that can make it really interesting for a best revival. So the only really problem I have actually with best revivals is when you gear or advertise too much to the actors versus the musical coming back, which brings me back to Sutton Foster, because when Music Man came back on Broadway, the headlines were Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster on the Music Man. Well, what's going to happen in, a year when their run is over? And then it's just, like the panache, the sexiness, the sizzle is gone now that these two performers are not doing it. And you're kind of leaving it then in the weeds there. So I don't think it's good to advertise a show coming back like that.
I feel like that's kind of the main point of it, though. Anything goes, anything that's been done before that would be ripe for a revival generally are, the Music Man, well-known productions. People are well aware of it. They've probably seen it many times. The people that sort of advertising would appeal to, they're mostly going to be like, okay, Music Man, I know what to expect there. Give me something that I haven't, that my brain, I haven't heard before. So Hugh Jackman plus the Music Man. That's like peanut butter and jelly. That's something that I can get my head around. It seems like that's the whole point.
That performance to only run for a limited amount of time, and then it's off Broadway again.
It's kind of like I heard that they've announced, maybe it started already, but there's this is at least the third revival of Glengarry Glen Ross on Broadway. And it's like Bill Burr, the comedian, is playing who the Ed Harris character in the movie version was. Yeah, so they did. This would be, I think, the third Broadway run of it, and then there was the film in the early 90s. And that's one, too, where I've seen the movie enough. I would still be interested to see a version of the play, especially based on the casts that have performed those roles throughout the years. Because I'm so familiar with it, I can plug, okay, who's playing the Pacino role in this Broadway version and whatnot. So I can see where you're coming from, though. But to me, it feels like, and again, as someone who does not have the Broadway love that you do, I feel like it would have a certain appeal to give me the actors as sort of the main draw of a revival.
I will also say just one more thing before we move on to hockey, all the Broadway fans, and we're 16 minutes into the show without talking about an actual win, for crying out loud. I know they're doing they're about to release a pro shot of Waitress, which I'm really excited for. And I do think that pro shots should be more readily available. And
you're losing me here. What define pro shot?
It's like the Broadway recording, but shot like a movie. So it's like them on stage and so it's like the camera, like they're acting on stage, but it's professionally done. So it's like a video, but it's not play.
Okay. So it's not filmic in the sense where they're making a film. It's a filmed version.
Yes,
of
the Broadway show.
Live show. Did they do that with Hamilton a couple years ago?
They did that with Hamilton. They've done it with Newsies. They did it with Come From Away. It's starting to become more and more popular. And I think probably they realize that I don't think, like, no one's going to say, I don't want to see it live. I'd rather just, if I see it on a pro shot, then I won't go see it live. I don't think that's the case, though. I think, if you see it in the pro shot, it would actually pique your interest more. It's like, oh man, that was so much fun. I'd like to see that live. In my opinion, that's how it would go. Waitress would be one of those. It's like, I can't just go see Waitress. I would like to see it this way. And then if it comes touring, I'm more likely to go, actually. But anyway, I'm for pro shots. That's my hot take.
Another enlightening episode of the Broadway Corner here on a college hockey podcast.
I can't imagine we'll have too many of these unless Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812 starts coming out and coming back.
Of course.
So, but let's talk puck. Huskies end up winning the game on Saturday, ending a Brett Larson head coaching drought of 77 days without victory. Hearing Freddie Mercury, "Don't Stop Me Now" on my timeline for a Brett Larson head coached squad, as obviously the St. Thomas win was in there when Larson was out winning gold medal. But it was, talking at least about Saturday's game, probably the most uncomfortable I've ever felt with a 3-goal lead twice. You're just kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop. Sadly did drop the game beforehand when they dropped it 4-3, up 2-1, and then, decided not to play hockey for about a 3 or 4 minute span that ended up kind of dooming them. So overall on the weekend, I actually was really impressed with the team and with how they came out. I thought actually they played really well on Friday as a whole. Posh, I think, looked a little bit rusty in net, and then a couple of bad bounces. but we scored 3 goals, which seems like forever ago since we've done that. And then also, was able to put the puck in the net on Saturday. But there's, two, or I would say just kind of one big question with Adam Ingram. Looks like he was out of the lineup for both games. I'm going to assume it's a healthy scratch. If we haven't heard any type of word that he was injured or anything along those lines, him out of the lineup, and we put points on the board. So what does that mean kind of going forward for him? It's going to be interesting. I'd like to have your take on that, Andrew. But overall, what were your thoughts on the weekend?
Yeah, getting offense was a refreshing surprise. And yeah, you mentioned 3 goals. Feels like it's been a while. Only had to go back a couple of weeks to the North Dakota tie for the last 3-goal performance, but the last 4-goal performance was that 77 days ago, that 5-2 win against Omaha, which was Larson's previous last head coaching victory prior to Saturday. This team, it's similar to the women's side where, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but their magic number was 3, getting to 3 goals, suffering their first loss of the year when scoring 3 goals in a game on Friday, previously 10-0-1. With the men's team, 4 is their magic number. They've only reached that 4-goal plateau on 5 occasions this year, but 5-0 when they score 4 or more goals. And that 5-goal performance against Omaha is their high water mark. One time this year they've scored 5 goals, which goes a lot to explain part of the problem. Again, there's no monocausal explanation for this Huskies free fall. It's not just lagging offense. It's been defense. It's been poor goaltending at times, especially during the Posh injury. Special teams has been hot or cold throughout the most majority of the dry spell. You can't pin it on one thing, but offense, if you're looking, and we've looked at the numbers, prior to this weekend coming into the bottom 10 offense nationwide. I'm sure the 7-goal performance, I haven't checked. I'll do it right now on the fly, but that probably improved your standing a little bit with the 7-goal performance. Not really. Still tied for 57th in the country at 2.2 goals per game. Tied there with Anchorage and Stonehill. So always good company when you're tied in an important stat like that with those teams. But and the Friday game was, chalk this another one up. Very similar type of game that we've seen during this streak, which made it to 11. Copyright Nigel Tufnell. And it did break the record. So we have been witness to history. Never before in the D1 era.
Everyone involved, and thank you for that moment.
We
I'm going to guess that was a Spinal
minute.
Tap reference. Is that correct?
It was.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, these go to 11, and according to that, the Huskies' winless streak went to 11, and then it was snapped. But that Friday game was certainly a winnable game, putting up 45 shots. If we're looking for positives, the kind of the dictating of play from an offensive standpoint, to a degree, we haven't seen in a full weekend, certainly in a long time. And part you can chalk that up. CC is not a great team, but it's nice to see the team control play to the extent that they did. Now, again, the ugly heads reared themselves as well. How many times during the streak in particular did we see these 5-minute stretches of just complete collapse where teams score in bunches? We saw that the Arizona State game, that was on a power play situation. We saw that against North Dakota, part of that on a power play situation. I don't think Western had 3-goal spurts, but they had a couple of 2-goal in a minute kind of stretches. This Huskies team seems to be susceptible to these periods of play where teams can just come on into their offensive zone and throw anything at the net and have it find the back of the net. And stopping bleeding in those kind of situations has been something that the Huskies have had real difficulties doing. And it's a big reason that this streak got so out of control to the extent where it broke a program record of futility. So needing to clean that up is obviously something. I mean, this season's basically lost, but obviously going forward with the group that you're going to carry over to future seasons, just hoping to learn from that experience. Stop the bleeding. 1 goal is enough. We don't need to make it a 2 or 3 goal sequence. And certainly on Friday, a couple of those were preventable. Either from Pasha's perspective, I thought a couple of those were not great goals to give up. The defense didn't really help them either from defensemen themselves or forwards that missed a back checking assignment. Was good to see Cooper Wiley back. We hadn't seen him in a while. And getting a goal.
He scores the goal.
I liked his little celly there.
Yeah.
We kind of put the saber in the sheath. It seems like a celly of someone that scores more often, but him being the first goal of the year. But good to see him back. And yeah, you mentioned Ingram and wanted my take on that. I mean, when you brought that up, I had forgotten that he was out this week, that he didn't play this week. He's a player that has dropped so far, maybe not so much on the official depth chart, but just in my mental kind of ranking of important players for this team. I would still, I've put on record that I think that we're going to hear that he's been injured this entire year, and all of his absences are going to be chalked up to injury of one variety or the other. He could have multiple injuries going on at this point. It's always difficult to get injury updates in general. I mean, the best we can hope for is cut the body in half, and it's either an upper body or a lower body injury. I haven't heard anything in particular there, but I would assume it's going to be something, a nagging injury or two was perhaps the reason. Again, just a guess from my part. But the fact that, hurt or not, he's just not been affected this year. And I don't know if it's just a coincidence that they scored 7 goals this weekend in his absence. I mean, I would hate to chalk it up to like Ryan Rosborough's return. It's not like that makes a negligible difference on any offense. And needing to get that fourth line reassembled with him, Ryman, and Deshaun, because again, that was flying prior to Rosborough's injury. I jest, but so yeah, I just wish that, I don't know, the season from Ingram's standpoint, talking about the Huskies, kind of a lost season overall, but for Ingram more than any individual player, this one's been one to flush. You hope that it's not all lost for him, that either he just improves health-wise or just mentally has something to prove next year. And we see kind of the Ingram that we thought that we were going to see coming into this year blossom into that 30-point type player. Because this year it's just been a complete bust. And now it's at a point where he's not even in the lineup, and I'm not even registering that as like a big loss from a fan's perspective. So yeah, I agree with your kind of take on that, and just hope that that going forward, that this isn't the ending of the Adam Ingram as a Husky story. Like, there's still another couple of good chapters to go, because the way that it's been, the story arc this year has been a tragedy of Shakespearean nature.
I wonder that quite a bit, how many times that we will see Adam Ingram in a Husky jersey anymore. Now
he certainly ain't going to go pro.
Certainly, I can't imagine Nashville's chomping at the bit, especially how terrible Nashville has been this year. Might as well get some free development. But I mean, would Ingram want to come back? Like, if this is a healthy scratch, how he is going to come back? And I kind of dictate where I think he stands as far as being Husky next season. I just think that how things have gone for him, and maybe he loves it here, and it's the furthest thing from his mind, but it's one of those, like, a fresh start somewhere else. Maybe it's change of scenery might be kind of in the cards for you because of just how mango shaped. Well, or is mango just a
it could
circle,
work,
I guess. I don't know. Like how upside down that this season is gone from him. I just think now with the transfer portal, there's just that little extra little question kind of hanging out there. And we haven't had kind of any, marquee player end up departing from a transfer portal, situation. And I think this one would be kind of the case of, now he's not playing as a marquee player, but I can see that if he's in a different sweater next year, I could see him halfway through the season having, 20 points already or something along those lines. So, because he's got the talent, he's got everything else, but he just hasn't been able to put it together. And to see him scratched for both games, I think was kind of the thing that's kind of set it off. Is like, that's really alarming to me. Usually if you send a message, send him for one. But after at the press conference, Brett Larson was talking about how, he really liked the team, had a lot of chances, a lot of, shots, created a lot of opportunities. Maybe it's just as simple as he wanted the same forward group out there again. So he decided to sit Adam Ingram again. But I'm really interested here to see, kind of next week and see where he goes, if he's going to be in the lineup, in what capacity, and to see how he's going to take, sitting for these two games, how he's going to take it against Denver, at Denver next weekend. So I don't know. It's something that, because I think if the Huskies are going to make any type of a push towards St. Paul, I do think we need him to get going. I think it's fine against Colorado College having this lineup, and we can pump our chests that we got this one out of the way, and that we had two solid games in a row. And again, if it wasn't for those 5-minute stretch on Friday's game, we'd be looking at a sweep. But it's going to be a different beast when you go into Denver. Now, it's not like Denver is incredibly hot right now, but at the same time, it is, they're going to be a really good, solid team. They're going to be chomping at the bit to kind of get at the Huskies as we're reeling. Or, at least, who knows where our morale is even after a win. But I don't know. It's kind of what I'm thinking is that Ingram, he's going to need to kind of find a place to get it together. And I think he is an important kind of factor here coming down the stretch.
I definitely agree. I feel like we're circling around the topic because it feels like you think he was healthy scratched. And I assumed it was injury related. But I have not heard any official word.
Like, I don't know. I feel like something would have come out, or he would have said something, or something would have been said.
He could have gotten hurt in the Friday pregame, just like Posh.
A toilet lid could have fell on him too. I mean, we've had strange things happen.
Any amount of plumbing fixtures could have done the trick. So I feel like it's, if he was healthy scratched, that would be much more of a, what happened here? And should we be afraid that he's going to bolt at the next available opportunity? If he was injured, then that would all sort of be, it seems like that's a major detail that it's an unknown that we don't know. So it's, I think, kind of academic to speculate kind of the larger implications of that. I thought you were going to say in that press conference that Larson mentioned any sort of status if he was healthy scratch, but that seems to be the biggest detail that would hinge on any of this kind of discussion.
I feel like if he would have said anything, he would have said that he's injured. I don't think he would have brought up Ingram if he was healthy scratched.
Well, that would depend on someone needing to ask him that question. And I don't see the St. Cloud media as really breathing down Brett Larson's neck. So I'm assuming no one asked him the question. So he didn't.
I mean, that's probably
he
the
didn't
case.
offer
That's
it.
true.
So because again, probably not the three people that would be at the press conference to ask him those questions. It might not be top of mind. What's the status of Adam Ingram because of the 5-point or whatever season that he's put up so far? And from Larson's perspective,
he's probably, I wasn't against scratching him, but for back-to-back games is to me a little bit surprising.
Again, I was surprised on Friday, and then on Saturday, it didn't even register with me. That's how much of an afterthought he's become this year. So
that is true.
The fact that you're bringing it up, I'm glad you are, because it's not something that I really came prepared to discuss for 10 minutes. But certainly coming down the stretch here.
I think actually that could be like the subtitle of this podcast. This isn't something I was prepared to talk about for 10 minutes, but hey,
every segment we could use that as the subtitle. That's right.
Get your Woklahoma on out of here.
Well, yeah. And if we're talking about revivals, the Adam Ingram story would be the Adam Ingram of years past would be a great revival to have just for this last couple of series this year. Because it's been a story, and certainly if he's getting scratched for the likes of Nick Ports et al., that would I think single-handedly drive someone to the portal. I think that's like a cause. The doctors would come up with that. It's like one of these major causes of the portalitis. Yes.
I wonder if there's some kind of a satire thing we could do about like cause of portal and then something. I don't know. There's a bit there. I think we could kind of workshop.
I'm thinking too, like if he's putting up this, the only thing let's just say he was healthy scratch. Let's go with your theory and that you're frightened that he might be off to greener pastures and putting up solid point total next year with somebody else. I would hope and I would think that the 2 years prior to this year, which were largely successful, it's not like he was in Hobie contention, but solid seasons, 20 to high 20s point totals in his first 2 seasons. If he were to have done this season as his freshman year, coming in as a drafted player and then sort of laying an egg right away, that would be in the Isaac Howard category, where clearly not a system that I'm going to thrive in, and I'm going to look elsewhere to try to resurrect or at least stabilize my professional prospects. With his track record of success in St. Cloud, you'd feel like this is more in the bump in the road, and let's try to recapture the greatness of 2023. Relatively speaking. So that gives me some hope that he's not going to be out the door the first second the portal opens. But again, we'll see. And I think it does depend largely on what we're talking about here. If he's been losing playing time out of necessity, i.e. he's been injured, or if this is all sort of a discipline and a comeuppance for what's been a poor season on the ice. So I guess it put a pin in that storyline, which we'll probably revisit. Hopefully we don't revisit it, but I don't know.
Yeah. It's, and the portal is, just such an interesting thing that's out there, because I think a lot of it also has to do with how happy you are playing with a coach or in a system. And I feel like Brett Larson is very much a player's coach. I think,
and it's not like Ingram wasn't getting chances. I mean, he was. I mean, that's coming into the season. He's on power play.
I would argue the scratch came a little bit too late in the season.
And again, I still think there's an injury. I mean, he started the year injured. He missed the first couple of games being injured. Missed a game here or there. I think one of the BC games he was out. So I mean, he's missed 4 or 5 games total prior to this weekend.
Something could be nagging. That's true.
That's what I'm going to go for, but maybe that makes me an optimist.
So, now do you have Powell?
There's candidates. I mean, I thought Posh played well on Saturday. I'll say that.
Oh shoot, yeah, I was going to ask. Posh's return, how did you feel overall weekend as a whole?
Because on Friday, I don't think he was very impressive. On Saturday, I thought he made up for that Friday night unimpressiveness. Made some good saves on grade A's from CC.
And that's, again, going to the press conference after Saturday's game this time. But, I mean, it's Brett Larson admitted to it, essentially, when he was talking about how we got up to the 3-0 lead in the first period. And then, they took it to us when we tried to, clam up defensively. And it's like, he's just flat out admitting that you're going into a shell for you're hanging on for those 2 periods of 40 minutes of hockey. You're hanging on to a 3-0 lead, which again, didn't make me feel wonderful. And even when it was 4-1, I was like, okay, I started to breathe a little bit easier, but then they made it 4-2. And it's just like, this team can't make it easy. And especially with all the trauma that we've gone through over the past, nearly 2 months. Yeah, it was the most uncomfortable 3-goal lead I've ever been part of. So, but to just flat out admit that you were, just kind of clamming up into your shell and waiting for them to kind of come at you. I mean, it was just annoying to listen to. You had 2 shots all third period. I mean,
32 to 8. 32 to 8 were the shots in the last 2 periods combined. CC.
And you can't say that, they were low quality chances and they were out. And it's like, yeah, a lot of them were, but CC had some really good opportunities that Posh did end up making really good saves on. And it's just like, if you've got a 3-goal lead, keep doing what you're doing, because obviously it's good enough to have a 3-goal lead. It's just this whole prevent defense. And that's where the whole thing I don't understand about football is why it's a lot easier to score points when the defense knows that you're going to pass. And it's the same kind of aspect of, you're just kind of you're going into the shell and you're just trying to protect and nurse this lead. And then they're just going to get opportunity after opportunity. And it was just annoying to watch and annoying to more stressful than it needed to be. That's all I'm saying.
No, I agree. I do feel like it is a game plan from Larson. I think
makes no sense.
He takes a page out of like the 2018 Duluth team, where this team should, is going to win 2-1 type games. So you get a minimal amount, just enough offense. And that should be enough for your defense to go. You just don't have that good of defense to have that recipe work. You needed a guy like Posh putting up a 940 save percentage for that to fly. And then we know what happened to his foot, or maybe we don't know exactly what happened to the foot. There's some debate there, but we saw what happened when he was out, and that recipe went mango shaped. And so, yeah, Posh might have been the player of the game on Saturday. I don't know if I can give him the weekend Powell based on his Friday performance. I mean, again, but Saturday, you really have the 1 period of good play from the forwards. Very good period. I mean, that was Zinger that got a goal waved off because of an offsides review. Such a long game on Saturday. Tons of delays, tons of reviews, no flow.
Had to restart the review system.
I mean, we should talk about this.
We should talk about
in a little bit. I'll give it to Barrett Hall. I don't know. 2-goal performance and an assist. We've talked about him. Really, every player during the 11-game free fall. You can look at that stat line during that time period. Hall, just 1 goal and 1 assist during that time period. But to get him kind of activated again was good to see. Net front presence on that first goal. A player type that I generally like. He's just been very inconsistent, and I'm not I'm not like confident that he's going to come the last couple of series in the regular season and the playoffs and like be an every game force here, but I like what I saw here, and I don't feel like I've given him the pout too often. So good to see his performance this weekend. Obviously, just the Saturday first period in particular, but I'll give Hall the pout this weekend.
Oh, yeah,
How about
I
you?
like it. First, I will say for Go Huskies Woo. Says for as bad as Posh was on Friday, he was good, if not better, on Saturday. This team can make a run. Probably too late that can fire off 5 wins in a row, but I don't think anyone would be that surprised. My pal was an odd one. Gross was awesome. Bernie too. I really liked Thorson this weekend. A heck of a lot of people I could have picked, but his pal was Jack Ryman. He played heavy at his return to the wing. Thought he was really disruptive and felt his presence on every shift. So he gave it to Jack Ryman, which I thought was very surprising. He was right at it being an odd one. I think he did remind me of Johnny Swanson out there a little bit, just kind of barreling around and hitting anyone and anything. But I did feel he made some plays and was very disruptive. So I don't know if it was pow worthy though. So I actually am going to give my pow to Thorson. And I think that's because the Thorson we saw and we're starting to see, I think is the Thorson that I thought we would be getting. I thought he was more confident with the puck. I thought he was a little bit less of an agitator this weekend, but also was obviously he had the skills and the presence and was able to pot in 2 goals. Argue probably the Friday goal might be a contender for goal of the year.
Nice backhand. And he's made that type of play where he's like coming in from the face-off circle down low, makes a play like that. He's done that 3 or 4 times this year for his goals. It's kind of his signature so far as a Husky. Other than the physicality, of course.
Yeah, other than that aspect of it. So it's so seeing that emerge, and I think the confidence for him kind of coming in right now as 5 goals on the year has really come on strong the last couple of weekends. I think now it's starting to click for him, and I think he's going to be a big presence here coming down the line here as we close out the season. So I'm really excited for him, as long as he kind of keeps that agitating stuff a little bit less, obviously still play with an edge, but we need you on the ice, and we need you to show off some of those skills that you're able to show. And there were some aspects where I saw a little bit of Ryan Lash to him, and you can call that a preposterous statement, but like it was more of his positioning. But it was those instances of like, oh, if he was just, a little bit over or a little bit, some of the chances he had that I was like, oh, that's a Ryan Lash type goal, but it was just, just some type of a miss happened on it. So I think if he's able to embrace kind of that style and able to get some of those pucks to fall in, I think he's going to be a dynamic player for us in the next couple of years. So hopefully he's figured it out. I was really impressed with this game, and I hope that continues.
I actually like that. I like that POW. I probably like it better than my POW, but I agree. This was a good weekend for him. Balanced his style of gameplay that we've mentioned. Good balance between the physicality, not overdoing it there, but also showing the offensive skill. That's a winning combination at this level. So yeah, I really like that POW actually.
Oh, I think.
Can I redo mine?
No.
I'll go with you instead.
I say that, but then he did take a roughing and sportsmanlike conduct penalty.
Well, that's part of the experience.
Yeah.
That's part of the Thorson experience. So, but again, I don't think it overstepped his bounds, and it didn't hurt the Huskies. It was effective. What's the gritty quotient? Effective contact. I think that's the statistic there. So this was a good weekend for increasing Thorson's gritty quotient.
Yeah, which is what everyone looks at. So
he is a GQ man.
2 weeks left for the season. We're traveling to Magnus for Denver. I talked a little bit here earlier. I said they were on a slide, but I forgot they played Miami last week. But the series before, when they split against Arizona State, split against North Dakota, they haven't been, I think, the dominant force that we've seen over the last couple of years. I think they look a little bit more vulnerable, but obviously you're looking at their high scorers, 31% on the power play. You look at Thompson, Tavine, and obviously Bulliam there on the back. Carter King, they've got some people who can put up the points, and Denver has had our number over the last couple of meetings there. They've all the last four tie.
Well, in Denver.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's nothing to say about how poorly we played in Magnus.
Yeah, no regulation wins in Magnus since 2015. They had a overtime win there a couple of years ago, but and then last year, 0-4-1 last year. That's including the frozen face-off season-ending defeat for the Huskies at the hands of the Pioneers. And that one in overtime as well? Yeah. So a couple of overtime loss there. So yeah, and not just losing those games last year, other than that overtime win for Denver at the X, the other 3 wins for Denver last year were just ass kickings. The 5-1 victory in Magnus, and then the home sweep at the Herb that Denver had late in the season was a sobering kind of reminder of kind of the second half slide for the Huskies, and then also kind of helped propel Denver to yet another natty as well. And so the game's really, other than, it's been like last year, it was that 5-4 overtime win is kind of an anomaly in that it was a close game. The majority of the games last year were not very competitive, and all in Denver's favor. And like you said, this team has a different feel to it than last year. I mean, they got off to a great start, undefeated in their first 12. But then since that Arizona State game, or series where Arizona State came in Magnus and swept them, which I had some thoughts about that. I don't get it. That really vaulted Arizona State. Their whole season changed with that weekend.
Yeah.
And you can kind of say the same thing for Denver to a lesser degree, obviously, because they're still locked in Pairwise. They're going to make the tournament. But since then, they've kind of been ho-hum, a little bit close to 500, which I threw it out there a couple of weeks ago. They might be doing like a snake in the grass. Let's say we're going to make the tournament. Let's try to stay healthy, and then we'll kind of kick it into high gear once the NCAAs roll around. Now, part of that formula of trying to stay healthy hasn't gone so smoothly because Matt Davis was injured a couple of weeks ago. Did not play this entire weekend against Miami, but I mean, they could have played their club team and beaten Miami. So I see that he was listed to as the backup. So I'm not sure if that was something where they're just giving Freddie Halleck the starts, because again, like an 8th grade goaltender could beat Miami at this point.
Or a UNLV goaltender.
True. But so I don't know who we should expect if Davis will start, or if we see Freddie Halleck. Denver might say too, like, oh, well, it's the 8th place team who just smoked the 9th place team in conference. Maybe we can do the same at home against the 8th place team. We'll see who's in net for the Pioneers this weekend. But but from their perspective too, you can't go too far in the grass as the snake in the grass if you're kind of trying to take it easy here in the regular season, because they got to fight for home ice in the conference standings. Right now they're fifth, kind of a log jam between third and fifth. 2 points separate third place Omaha and fifth place Denver. Denver's got the easiest schedule of those three teams remaining. They play eighth place St. Cloud and then home and home with sixth place CC to end the season. North Dakota and Omaha play each other in the last weekend of the year. Western's got to go to Western, North Dakota's got to go to Western this weekend. Omaha hosts Arizona State. Those are the top two teams. So Denver's in good position to move up, not just into home ice territory, but potentially could get up to second place if they win out. And Arizona State only wins one of their two remaining games at Omaha this weekend. So they've got something to play for here, at least positioning for the playoffs. Again, if they're really in NCAA tournament is really when we kind of spring into full gear. Even if they're in that mode, they're still going to want to improve their conference standing position in order to make that sort of warm up, if you're going to put it that way, as they might treat the Frozen face-off. You want to do is you don't want to put yourself too up against a hill there to climb. So I would expect them to bring it this weekend. And it's not a favorable matchup for the Huskies. I would not say. It's at least good that they've gotten the streak off their back. You really didn't want this to be a 12-game winless streak going into Magnus.
Yeah.
And maybe this gives them a little bit more confidence, and that the mental strain of having such a long winless streak kind of build up, and you're squeezing sticks more, and there's a frustration that continues to compound on itself. You seemingly have taken that trash out to the curb, and it's gone, and it's taken care of, and you've dealt with that mentally. Now maybe you can just kind of relax. You realize that you're basically locked into eighth place at this point. They're 4 points behind 4 points behind Duluth for seventh place. I mean, put it this way, if Denver takes 3 more points than the Huskies do this weekend, that series against Duluth to end the regular season is meaningless. St. Cloud would have locked into eighth place at that point. And the shoe to drop there is Duluth's got Miami this week. So really, if they take care of business, we're not even going to really have to play for any battle for seventh place at the Herb against Duluth in a couple of weeks. Maybe this just gives the Huskies free reign. Again, you really got nothing to lose, and no one's expecting you to win this weekend against Denver. Perhaps this, enables them to surprise us a little bit. I'd love to see it. Our expectations are as low as you can get coming in with an eighth place team going into Denver on the road.
Hey, but we've
surprise
spot.
That's right. We fended off those pesky Red Hawks.
Fended off Miami.
We clinched eighth. We will make the NCAA, or excuse me, the NCHC playoffs, not the NCAA.
At least eighth.
That's true. They can only go to seventh. They were eliminated from sixth with CC's win on Friday there, but they can move up to seventh. Like I said, even if they take care of business here, it might not matter because Duluth might just probably will beat Miami this weekend because everybody else in conference has in every other game this year. You see that it's 30. We thought the 11 game winless streak for St. Cloud was bad enough. Miami's conference winless streak currently stands at 36 games dating back to last year. The only loss, there's been a couple of overtime losses. St. Cloud was one of those that they were able to get a point out of. But their only non-loss, meaning a tie in that 36-game span for Miami, was a tie at Magnus last year, who ends up winning the national title. That's there's hockey for you kind of moment. But Yeah, we'll see. Miami's they're a marvel. I mean, they could really do this here and run the table. 20 losses in a conference where you play 24 conference games is very difficult to do. And hats off to them. And yeah, from St. Cloud's perspective, at least we don't have to finish 9th because of that team. So I guess thank you, or
I gotta be
thanks for nothing.
Yeah, I gotta be in somewhat rare territory then, that I have been one of the few Husky fans to travel out to Denver to see a win.
I would have been in the building last time they did it. That was in 2015.
Yeah. I don't think I was there. I think I was there. It was 3-0 victory, and then we got smoked the next night.
I think we've been over this. I think that was 2012.
Yeah, I think that was 2012, 2013 maybe? Season. Yeah.
Gwozdecki era.
Yep.
They swept them that weekend in 2015. That was when Montgomery was their coach. And that was the 15-16, one of the best Bosco teams. Maybe the best. I mean, you can obviously put the 17-18 team right up there as well. But I don't know. For my money, I'd still put the 15-16 team above that 17-18 team.
That'd be a good podcast.
I bet you take that 15-16 team as well because of Kosela.
Probably.
You got the Kosela factor.
Yeah,
and that was like a weekend. That would have been first half of the year. I think it was right around my birthday, so it was like December-ish. And that was one of the first weekends where we realized this was something special. Like, they had gotten off to a great start, obviously, but beating, I think they had just beat, that was like the North Dakota where they beat them 6-1. That was right around that time period as well. We were getting it. We knew it was a good team, but that was one of those weekends where this is a really good team. And then the heartbreak came later, but that was at least an enjoyable weekend. And again, that's been almost 10 years since you've had a regulation win there. So even more reason to break that streak. You already broke this current streak.
How will we break breaking that streak?
No.
What's your predictions this weekend? No.
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 I'm not gonna predict the Huskies are gonna win.
I
think they'll be a competitive game. I think one of these two will be. They could even take them to overtime. I wouldn't be shocked with that. But I'm not going to go out and say that they're going to win one of these games. What about you?
No, I don't. I don't. I mean, I'm happy with how they played against CC, but I think playing a
Denver's
underwhelming CC
team
is going to be a different beast, especially as they've got a little bit more to fight for than we do. We just have to fight to not embarrass ourselves anymore. But also, like you said, this hockey's hockey. So this could be kind of a weird fluke thing where we're able to squeak out some kind of 4-2 with an empty netter, and we're like, what the heck is going on?
Hat trick for Adam Ingram.
Right, exactly. And a goal and assist and a fight for
who knows? We might get there on Friday, and Freddie Halleck's starting, and it's like every shot's going in. Like, why?
Yeah,
this is easy. I don't know.
Again, I think there is lead and end up losing like 7-3.
We did that a couple years ago. That was one of those CBS games where they got out to a 3-0 lead, 3-0 lead right away, like in the first 10 minutes, and then it was. I think that was the 8-5 game. It was just.
I think so.
Lots and lots of goals.
Yeah.
In that one.
Did you want to throw your hat in the ring for an official nominee?
All right. So before you play the clip.
Lowell Sun Sports Memorial Foot and Mouth Award nominee.
I mean, we can we'll get to the foot and mouth nominee, but we had to talk a little bit about the tech issues. We're not talking about St. Cloud Tech, and we're not talking about Michigan Tech. We're not talking about Georgia Tech. We're talking about NCHC.TV.
We're not talking about Louisiana Tech.
Any tech school that you're thinking of, that's not where we're going. It's short for technology, and it means the streaming system that this streaming service that this awesome conference likes to tout, and was not firing on all cylinders this weekend, as we saw.
I don't think it was firing on any cylinders.
And it seems like it was different, both games. So the Friday game was a slow down, then speed up kind of thing, where the Saturday game was where we're just going to black out sections of the game and sort of just glitching in and out of the action. I don't know which was worse. I mean, I was thinking I was going to have a epileptic seizure there on Saturday. Friday, I didn't care for it, obviously, either. I saw some chatter that their tech platform was throwing the St. Cloud production under the bus, saying there was something in-house that was the reason for the glitches. We've never seen this before.
No.
And we saw that same, like the slowing down and then the speeding up. That was towards the last half of that Saturday game in Duluth earlier this year. It was the same kind of issue. So when I saw that was the excuse that the conference, or at least their whatever Sidearm Sports, I think it's called, or the platform is that generates the NCHC TV, I was skeptical about that because it's like, well, we saw the same issue at a different arena. So I can't see how this would have been an in-arena issue. And then I did see that the Arizona State athletic director tweeted something else saying, sorry fans about the issues we had with our stream this weekend. I didn't check out their stream. I only flipped over there a couple of times on Friday. I didn't notice anything. I flipped over to that game and the North Dakota game and saw no issues with their streams. So it did get some credence to the theory that this was the St. Cloud, something to do with in the arena that was affecting the stream on Friday. But apparently on Saturday, at least, the Arizona State stream was wonky. So that was certainly frustrating. I mean, it was difficult to watch. Like it was fraying my nerves, and double whammy of it forcing me to listen to the TV announcers, because there's no way, obviously, that it can sync this up with KVSC stream, with it being all out of whack time-wise, and there's lags and then delays. So there was no syncing the stream and muting the TV announcers, which I usually do for home games or any Husky games. So had to endure Jim Erickson and Gino Parrish. And again, it's a reminder of why I mute them and sync it up with KVSC. I think it's because I've had some difficulty articulating it. It's not the overly positive or even like the hesitancy to give any sort of negative criticism about the home team that rankles me. It's the aggressive, like eager, you gotta spin everything in St. Cloud's favor. So they at one point they did the after CC on Friday had that 3-goal outburst. And he did like a supercut of all 3 of the goals. And it's like, well, see, that one was tipped. That one, that's exactly what the CC player was trying. He's trying to get that juicy rebound that as a set play. And see that one, he couldn't see that puck there. And it's just this, like, he's trying to make all these excuses for why these pucks went in the net. And none of them were, he should have stopped it. Even like the one where he claimed, I think it was the second one, the kind of the floater. He was saying that Ralph tipped it. I didn't see that Ralph tipped the puck, but that's what he was going for. So the best part, so here's what you can see. Do you have the clip that I sent you?
I got the clip.
So I'll set it up a little bit.
Right now?
There's midway through the third period, and there was a sequence where there was a play where CC got the puck out to the slot, and grade A scoring chance. Oh, saved by Isaac Posh, stoned him, and puck goes down to the other end of the rink. So there's a little bit of dead time. During this entire kind of minute, they're just raving about, God, Posh is back for the first time, first home game in 4 months or whatever it's been. And it's so essential to this team's success, and such a bummer that he was hurt. So they're just, lavishing praise on Posh. And then they show the replay, and you can show this is after the whistle. Posh has covered it up. So here we'll take it from Gino here.
St. Cloud State has been just blessed. Here we get another look. Just been blessed with outstanding goaltenders over the year. And here he is on the post, reaches out there to try and hit it at the post. It looked, I don't know if I'm going to say that the tip of his glove got a piece of it. Otherwise, it was
no.
But it clearly did hit the post from that angle. Wow. You know what? And if it was on net, Posh would have had it. His glove was there anyway. So it's a win-win. Good point.
So when you get, and by the way, he did not tip the puck with his glove. He did not contact the puck at all. But when you get to the point where you're giving Posh credit for saves he didn't make, I feel like you need to take a step back and assist there.
And would have made it anyway. His glove was there.
Except if he would have shot it anywhere else on the net. Yes, if he would have shot it into his glove, he would have saved it. Assist there to Jim Erickson too, with the good point there at the end. Because he's the same thing with when he did the Enga thing, when he did the coach's show, where he was just encouraging him the entire time. No pushback from Jim Erickson whatsoever. I feel that it's an embarrassing coverage. It's not a flavor of analysis that I care for. I can see those that prefer it, but and again, call me strange. I am not the kind of fan that needs to be comforted with a blanket and a pacifier saying everything's good here. It's all good. We don't make mistakes around here. Everything that goes wrong is either bad luck or some combination of evil forces that have descended upon us the entire time too. You wouldn't have imagined this is a team on 11 game or 10 game coming into the Friday game losing streak or winless streak. You would have tuned in. If you've been in a coma the last 2 months, you turn on the game, you'd think that this team was still 7th in Pairwise and just doing fine in their NCAA prospects. I feel like that's a good nominee. It might not be the best clip ever of what I mentioned about the sort of the spin meistering that sort of rankles me, but that was a pretty good example of it. Because again, we're giving credit for phantom saves that the Post made. It's fine to say that we saw it wrong. It's fine.
I think it's a solid nominee. I don't know. It's going to be a lot to top RJ Enga saying that they dropped the puck unfairly. But
I feel like, and we should have done this last year. I feel like having the sound clip is important. Like, I'm sure we could go back to that coach's show and clip the Enga line. There was a bunch to choose from.
There's a bunch to pick from.
And like last year with the Mayotte, that was like a 6-minute rant.
Yeah, we couldn't clip that.
I've been seeing on Twitter too. I posted something about it. This is the time of season. This is the Lowell Sun Sports Foot Mouth Award. This was an award born from Pairwise.
Are we going to quickly talk about New Hampshire?
Well, I'm just setting it up there because I've seen a lot of chatter every year.
All right.
This year is New Hampshire.
Here we go. I haven't used this sounder in a while, so I'm excited.
Time now for the commentary on the commentary.
Discourse.
I feel like that's more reserved for the Wodens and the McMahons and the actual writers. Yes, some random anonymous Twitter account.
We could talk about McMahon's crack reporting in the newsletter about women's pairwise if we want.
We could. We could. Quick summary there. Someone asked him, hey, are you gonna, two people asked. Well, one question was, do you feel like you should cover women's hockey? And he basically said, I really don't know enough about it. He's kind of honest about it. And then someone else asked, does the women's side use the Pairwise? And he goes, I believe they do. That was the entirety.
That was the entirety of it. I believe they do. Great research. Just top notch, CHN. It's like they have a conniption if women's hockey is talked about at all or referenced. It's like, oh, I believe I do. I mean, to be fair, we can't check their website to see if they use the Pairwise at all. Maybe that's why, because they don't know about it.
You click on the Pairwise on the women's side, it'll redirect you to the men's Pairwise, and it'll cause you to believe, God, I didn't know that Boston College's women's team was this good. Oh no, that's their men's team. Okay, something's wrong.
But anyway, New Hampshire is definitely getting the benefit in the Pairwise of being in Hockey East.
And I saw that
a lot of people
like Schlossman. This started a couple weeks ago. I saw Schlossman put out there like New Hampshire's ahead of North Dakota in the Pairwise, and kind of basically did like a Linda Richmond discuss amongst yourself kind of thing, like get all angry about that. Which I feel is like it's a moot point. It's like New Hampshire's 20th in Pairwise. They're not going to make the tournament. So what does it matter if you at North Dakota being 21st and not 20th instead of New Hampshire? Like, that's not going to be the deciding factor between you being in the tournament and not. But seemingly people are, and then I saw a UMass fan account who was doing the same kind of shtick, 10 games under in conference, and they're, 20th in Pairwise. And it's like, well, you could say the same thing about UMass, who's under 500 in conference in Hockey East, but yet not only they're in the tournament field currently, they're a 3 seed at 12th or 12th overall. You could say the same. You have the same sputtering outrage on UMass's Pairwise position, and it's the same logic because Hockey East is just all their teams is Pairwise is on steroids this year, because they nailed it in out of conference play, over 70% winning percentage conference wide. And all these teams, Merrimack's beaten BC. Every one of these, even the bottom feeders of the league, have 2 or 3 signature wins against teams in the top 10 in Pairwise, mostly other conference foes. But this is and again, if you want to complain about the Pairwise, I will go along with you. But especially if you're another Hockey East fan, it's kind of like you're telling on yourself if you're complaining about UNH's Pairwise. And if you're Schlossman, why are you worried about who's 20th in Pairwise? Because they ain't going to make the tournament anyway. So I feel like that sort of commentary, that's like an every year. It just depends on this year it's UNH. Last year it was UMass and CC. That was kind of the big squabble. Whoever is the last at-large team in the field. And Lowell Sun Sports, that was the year 2015, the 2014-2015 season. That was the year where St. Cloud made the tournament. In the year where the NCHC got 6 out of 8 teams in to the conference or to the NCAAs. And UMass Lowell, the Sun Sports, whoever their hockey guy was, pointed at the records. Boy, Lowell's got 20 wins. Yours is St. Cloud with 15 and 12 or whatever it was. What is wrong with Pairwise? I don't get it. There's going to be something like that every year, which is, I think, why this sort of foot and mouth award originated. But that doesn't mean that we need to stick on Pairwise related topics every year when we pick foot and mouth awardee, which is why I've nominated Gino for that huge honor. But still, with Pairwise, it is an evergreen topic. And it just, again, I feel like, New Hampshire's, I feel like this year I'm just kind of reading the tea leaves. I do think I think Arizona State is going to be they're going to be the Lowell Sun this year. Because I feel like they're going to win 20 plus games and they're going to be out. Penn State, maybe. I mean, Clarkson's already got 20 wins. But I feel like Arizona State is primed because whoever is going to be the last Hockey East team, like right now, Lowell is 15, 12, and 3. A team with a record like that is going to make the tournament. And some team with 20 plus wins is going to point to that and say, we got screwed. So I feel like we're going to get some nominees here in the next couple of weeks and culminating on Pairwise Sunday, the selection show, because I feel like that's the prime time for salty tweets.
Mm-hmm. It is going to be interesting. I know you've had a hot streak with correctly picking the field, but if we're getting 6 from Hockey East,
7 currently,
7
if
interconference matchups
today.
and whatnot. I think. Are you nervous a little bit about your streak?
I remember being nervous last year. I really haven't dug into it too much. I'm keeping an eye on it. That would be one factor. I think the bigger factor is, I mentioned this on last week's show, Penn State's right there, and then North Dakota, which, again, they're a fringe team at this point, really can only win based on winning the conference tournament. But those two teams are host schools for regionals. So if they make the tournament, they've got to be placed in their home regional, which then will throw wrenches into the system. Penn State seems to be in the best position to do that. But yeah, 7. If you have 7, I don't think that they're going to have I do not think they'll ever have a first round matchup with the same conference opponents like they did in the Wisconsin year, where they had Wisconsin play Denver in the first round, the year that they were under 500. I do think that they will move mountains to avoid a first round matchup between two conference teams. So knowing that, and like McMahon does one every week, he does like a to predict the field. It seems like they've been avoiding like Mankato's presumptive team that people will put in for the CCHA representative because they're leading the conference. They won the McNaughton this past weekend. Congrats to them. But they always have them playing Michigan State because they'd be listed the 15th seed, Mankato. I feel like they will match up Mankato with the Gophers. If Mankato's a 4 seed and the Gophers are a 1 seed, even if it's not perfectly 215 or 314, whatever the overall seeds are, I do feel they're going to put Mankato against the Gophers in the first round, which will probably piss off Gopher fans, which would be great. But there are those kind of things, because that's something where the committee has a track record of doing exactly that, loading up Minnesota teams in Fargo. So I feel like that would be something that I would go for, where like the McMahons of the world would avoid. So we'll see, but it's kind of academic to do it at this point. I'd kind of just wait until that Saturday of the conference tournaments and
how
knock
great
it out
would
there.
that be though? A Rhett Pitlick revenge game. I mean, I don't know.
And then all the Minnesota sports fans would be conspiracy theorists saying, well, they want to knock out, they don't want 2 Minnesota teams to make the Frozen Four. So they want to put them both in the same bracket.
Yep, exactly. I was gonna bring up a point. Kind of in regard to Pairwise and just kind of how things have shaken up. I do think first and foremost, there is too much weighting that does go into non-conference, but I get that it is like that because you do want to compare how teams are non-conference, but you'll get situations like this every couple of years where one conference just has dominated their non-conference and more often than not, NCHC or the WCHA back then has been the benefactor of that type of a situation. So now the shoes are on the other foot. And I think maybe a Hockey East is thrown in there in the past as well. But it's just kind of the thing that it really makes me interested in is if you're going to see any type of a change in coaches thinking that maybe you want to have some of these out of conference games later in the season versus early in the season, when you have more of your feet because of their weighting a lot heavier in the non-conference comparisons when it comes to that. So I think that's just, I don't see any coaches going for that or whatnot. And obviously, you've got one over Thanksgiving break usually, or Christmas break usually, but maybe have, 2 or 3, maybe even a February series in some instance kind of thrown in there and kind of switch around a conference schedule. I don't see teams doing it, but there might be a benefit to it with, getting a full, a lot more games under your belt before you get a big non-conference matchups for these types of situations. So I don't know, just kind of something that I've thought about.
See, from my perspective, you're right. It's weighted importantly, the out of conference. It's more so the pairwise, if you want to boil it down to its essence, it's a metric to assign strength of schedule more than anything in relative to other conferences. Because again, like I said, with the 20 win, whoever's got X amount of wins, 25 wins for Holy Cross versus 15 for Lowell. How can Lowell be 10 spots ahead? Yada, yada, yada. But at least in that situation, most college hockey fans are aware, yes, Atlantic hockey's not the same beast as Hockey East is. It's trickier when you're comparing Hockey East to Big Ten or NCHC or something, the power conferences, so to speak. So the Pairwise essentially will rate their schedules based on the relative strength of them. And that's, I think, the computer's biggest task. And when you have a season like this year with Hockey East, where everyone seems, there's like no dog in that conference. Even the worst teams are kind of decent and they're able to win big games here and there. That just means all of their teams, you look at the strength of schedule for all of Hockey East teams, I'm sure they're all 11 of those teams are going to have their strength of schedule rated in the top 15 or top 20 based on the fact that they play 23 conference games against other teams that are playing themselves. So just by the very nature, when you have such a strong league top to bottom, everyone's strength of schedule is just going to be jacked up, maybe artificially so. And then when you factor in out of conference as well, that just moves all the rising tide lifts all boats. So every team in that conference is going to be benefited by. You could say the same thing about Big Ten this year. We're talking about Penn State right on the doorstep. That would make it 5 teams out of the Big Ten out of 7, which is almost impressive. That might be a higher percentage than 7 out of 11 teams for Hockey East. Those two conferences have really been killing it this year. And it's a fact, a lot of it is they both nailed their non-conference and then beating each other up in conference, meaning that you're kind of giving every team sort of quality wins along the way. That's a good recipe for getting a crap ton of teams from your league into the NCAAs. And I don't know how to fix it. I know that the women's side, this will be a good segue. The women's side, which to answer McMahon, yes, they do use Pairwise. Their formula, so the men's side uses RPI versus the women's side uses NPI, which is a slightly tweaked formula. RPI will weight like your winning percentage against your opponent's winning percentages by your opponent's winning percentage. Stay with me. The NPI formula is similar, but the weightings are a little bit different. And I feel like it's a better crack at the math. It's less volatile in terms of, at least when you're assigning conference, like we wouldn't see necessarily the 7 teams out of one 11-team league using the NPI formula rather than the RPI. I don't think it's a huge difference, but I think it softens it a little bit. So there are tweaks with math you can do. I've advocated using the Pairwise as like a guide, and you still have a sort of human committee, which I think scares the bejesus out of a lot of people. And I think I will say this, and then we can move on to the women's side. The Penn State situation that I mentioned now, where they're like 0.0002 behind Lowell for the last at-large. Like that difference is razor thin, as thin as you can get. I feel like this is the situation why you have the computer make the decision. Because if you have it's between Lowell or Penn State, and Penn State is a host school of a regional, you've got conspiracy theories upon conspiracy theories that are ripe for that situation, to have a human committee having to decide between one of those two teams for your last team in. This is a scenario which makes me kind of rethink my idea of having humans pick the teams rather than a computer. But that's not to say that computers make the best decisions either. But this is a good situation to have, I think, a objective machine make the call.
So with that, into the women's, as the Huskies ended up dropping both games against Ohio State. And you hear that and you think it's about to be expected, since Ohio State is, the number 2 team in the nation. There were 2 incredibly close games. Friday's game, a 5-3 loss that St. Cloud was down 3-0, ended up tying it up in the third period before Ohio State was able to get a power play goal to make it 4-3, and then the empty netter to make it 5-3 victory, and then 3-2 when again down 2-0, and the Huskies end up tying it up and making it 2-2 in the third period. But it was another instance that just a couple minutes after we tie it up, Ohio State's able to score and get the victory. So it was one of those weekends where I thought they played well. Obviously, Ohio State's going to get a majority of the chances, majority of the shots. But no quitting the Huskies, and that they were able to battle back. They showed me a lot of, I guess heart is the best way I can explain it. On the weekend, backs were against the wall, able to come back, and unfortunately, the experience and the talent, I think, weighed out a little bit more on Ohio State, and that they were able to propel and get the victories. But to be tied into the third period, late into the third on Saturday and about midway through the third, and really it's that power play goal. You come back from 3 rip on Friday's game, you tie it up, and then right away you get that power play, and you think right there the game hinges on this power play. I think if they kill off that power play, we either win in regulation or we go into overtime, and then whatever happens in overtime happens. We get some sort of marker or point. But you have to kill off that penalty, and unfortunately they weren't able to, and Ohio State was able to hold on for the victory. But it just to see the stick-to-itiveness, I would say, of that the women's squad, and it was thrilling games that came down to the wire both nights, and it was a fun weekend for the women, even though it did end up in 2 L's on the scoreboard.
Yeah, I mean, last week's show did predict that they were going to win one of these games, and especially the Friday game, you get out to that 3-0 deficit, 2-0 after the first, and 3-0. It certainly didn't look very promising at that point. But both games, once the Huskies scored the first goal, there was like a new life kind of injected into them, and a confidence that I have not had about this team. I was like, I think they're gonna come back here, and gut punch is the best way to put it for both of these losses, because you feel like if you'd have just gotten it overtime in each case, even losses in overtime or ties, we might be singing a different story. Again, even coming into this weekend, it was going to be a long shot this team is going to make the NCAAs, because it depends on beating good teams here down the stretch. And you can stretch this back to the Gopher series from last weekend as well. But there's been opportunities in the last 3 games. I mean, there was 3 gut punches in a row. I know that you weren't here last week, and I'm actually kind of interested in your take in that Gopher series, because you didn't have a chance to put it on record last weekend or last show. But I mean, yes, if you wanted to be a cynic, you can go back and say, well, the season's chalked up to not making the tournament, let's say, is chalked up to those losses against St. Thomas, for instance, or Mankato. I mean, they've had some bad losses this year, or like non-wins, let's say, overtime results, whatnot. You can't say that it's because of these last 3 games that it's come down to, but you feel like they've had an opportunity to win every single one of these games against Minnesota and Ohio State. And Ohio State being on the road. And then you won at Ritter as well, going back one more game there. I didn't see this season playing out like this, especially when the first part of the second half started. And being able to play with Ohio State offensively to the extent that you did this weekend, spotting them a 3-0 lead, hey, we'll come back. And you did the same thing, 2-goal deficit on Saturday. There was I noticed like on Saturday, last year when St. Cloud beat Ohio State, Muzzerall she wasn't behind the bench during that game that the Huskies won. Mm-hmm. And, huge shot disparity, a fluke kind of win for the Huskies. And Muzzerall, we don't even know what the reason. It was probably a personal reason, whatever. She had a dentist appointment, let's just say. She didn't feel the need to be behind the bench against St. Cloud last year. Like, this is like Ohio State takes this team seriously now. I feel like that's something that I got out of this weekend. I think you can say the same with Gophers as well from last weekend. This is not a team that just is happy to get a couple of bounces and maybe squeak out a lucky win. This is a team that's being able to compete toe-to-toe with the best of what the WCHA has to offer. And we've seen that coming down the stretch here in the second half, getting points in Laban. Not many teams at all have been able to say that this year. Winning at Ritter and then being in each one of these 1-goal losses, coming down third periods. You're tied with these teams, or ahead, at least in the Gopher game at home, in third periods against these teams. And I feel too that Gentry's been playing really well in this stretch, but a lot of it's been powered by the underclassmen, Sunderland, Sorial in particular. But even players like Marie Moran has stepped up. We've talked about Urela, her emergence in the second half, becoming like a power play figure. It gives me great promise going into the future here. Yes, we're going to be losing players like Gentry, Ross, but the young core of this team, it's a different feeling. I'm still confident about this team as we came into this season picking the Huskies to make the NCAAs. I think I did. Maybe you were you didn't pick them. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back to our season preview for the team. I feel like we might have went one and the other, but at least at some points in the year, I think that we've each picked them to make the NCAAs. And from my perspective, that might have just been like wishful thinking. If we have this core mature to how I feel like they can mature and take that next step, and I think we're seeing part of that next step being made this last month or so. And it gives me a brand of confidence that I don't feel is just wishful. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like this is real. And it's still, year 3 of Adulski. We've always kind of felt he's been ahead of the curve in terms of his plan here long term. If this is part of the evidence of us seeing this team develop into an actual contender, not just a cute story, let's say, I think we're seeing it here, even in these losses. I hate to be the moral victory guy, but just the way that they were able to perform this weekend, taking punches on the chin, but then returning those punches, and having Ohio State expend every last ounce of energy they had to win both of these games. Yes, it's obviously frustrating. I think the task now is you need to beat Duluth. You need to win the series, and you might need to win the WCHA playoffs to get into the tournament. I feel like you needed to win one of these games this weekend to have any hope of making it as an at-large. I think that's off the table. So that's frustrating. But just going forward, not just to this weekend, which I feel more confident going into a Duluth series than I ever have with this Huskies team. I'm still not going to say that they're going to win the series, but I'm confident they're going to score a goal, let's say, which has not been easy Yeah, at Amsoil.
I mean, that hasn't, sadly.
I'll call that. I'll go out on a limb and say they're going to score goals in every game they play this weekend. And
are you more confident in a victory at Amsoil or at Magnus?
At Amsoil.
Okay.
Just with the way that the teams played, which sounds weird because they've lost 3 in a row. But I feel like they've.
It sounds weird because we can't score a goal in Amsoil.
Right. But I feel like Duluth's not playing their best hockey, and I feel like St. Cloud is playing their best hockey of the year, even in this 3-game slide, because you could have won all 3 of these games, which I would just like to see that in another universe. You'd be probably 7th in pairwise. You might be like this weekend against Duluth. They might be like fighting for pairwise position this weekend. Not just talking about who's going to win that playoff series. But coulda, shoulda, woulda. Can't make excuses, but it is it's another step in the development of the program as a whole, and I do feel proud of this team and how the second half, which again, the second half of the men's team went off a cliff, and it feels like that was a similar trajectory that this women's team was on. But they were able to right that ship. The Thelma and Louise car took a turn away from the cliff. And even more than that, they've gotten back on the road here, and they're stepping on the gas. So I'm excited to see them this weekend, even though, as we mentioned, it's hard to be confident about this team going into Amsoil. But I don't know, this team, at least it's fun to watch. Yeah. And you can't turn it off. Even now we know, even if you're down 3-0, I can't flip the channel, because they're still going to give a team like Ohio State all that they've got and more. So yeah, props to the women's team. I feel like they played way better, deserved way more than 0 points this weekend. And it's just, you're at 11th in pairwise. I mentioned the at-large dream, I think, is dead. But there's still something to play for. And I don't think any team, I think there's another thing you saw from Ohio State, not a team that you want to see in the playoffs. So I don't think, even with the hex that Duluth has apparently over the Huskies, I certainly don't think that they're looking forward to this weekend. Certainly the best chance for any sort of upset series this weekend in the WCHA playoffs, I would say. And I feel like they should at least take a game. Just the run of dismal success at Amsoil has got to run out at some point. Like I said, the offensive drought has got to end at some point. Feels like this is a comeuppance weekend. Maybe, I don't know, just give me something entertaining, like I said, and win a game here this weekend, and you have over 500 season. I think that's a positive development for this program as well. Can't say that too often in this program's history. And so there's a lot to play for this weekend, because this is it. If you lose this weekend, you're done. You lose the series. So I don't know. It's just I am still enjoying watching this team play. I'm enjoying them. You were on the Sorial train earlier than I was, but she's probably my favorite player at this point. At least among the forwards.
So fun to watch. It just feels like anytime the puck's on her stick, she's able to make some sort of play. She's just a joy to watch.
You can see this. Hopefully we can extrapolate this into next year, where she kind of assumes Sunderland as well,
and Sunderland too. That's a dynamic pair that they have. So it's that Friday game against the Gophers, just how it all unfolded and how it ended, with just shots back and forth and going toe to toe, just laying haymakers with each other. I was jumping around the hallway, after Annex goal there to get the lead. Just absolutely thrilled, because it was so demoralizing after Sunderland's, great goal. So it was just, and then, the next day, and then have the lead, and then end up having that slip away, and just overall the great weekend. Yeah, they're. I think they are, even though the record does kind of suck here towards the end. I think they are playing some of their best hockey, and it does give me some spark of hope coming in for this weekend. One of the questions that we got, and I want to ask you. I'll come back to our POW here in just a second, but basically Gage asked on Twitter, who do you think should start game 1 in Duluth? And I just the whole goalie tandem and the whole goalie situation, it is kind of interesting for me to even think this. I never would have thought this at the beginning of the year, but I think you start Kariko game 1.
Agree.
And I think she gives you the best chance to win. Now, Adulski might go with the tenure aspect of the experience and just the whole makeup of her career at St. Cloud State and give her, this last series. But I think definitely game 1, come out with your best option. And as of late, Kariko's been your best option.
I agree. I would give Kariko the start. She has been the Friday starter for a while now. Yeah. So that's you're not breaking your routine at that point. Plus, if you lose on Friday, you come back with a Hola, and you potentially end the season with your senior. She's your last stand, so to speak. Whereas if you start her on Friday, then you bring in Kariko and the season ends after game 2 and it's Kariko. I feel like there is some politics there where I think you want to go out with your senior there. Hopefully we're winning the series, but in the case of if you got your backs against the wall, you put your 5th-year, program history record setting Sonia Hola. I think you bring her back on Saturday, and that way again you're sticking with your tandem. You're not deviating from that. And I think I agree with you too. Kariko's got the better numbers of the two so far this year. Yeah. They're very close, but lower goals against, higher save percentage in about the same amount of time. So you can use that perspective as well. Just statistically, she's got the edge this year. So yeah, I would go with Kariko on Friday. And then you also have the opportunity too, if she shuts out Duluth and she is lights out, you've got the potential of riding a hot goaltender. So I think there's plenty of reasons to go with Kariko on Friday.
Who is your POW for the Ohio State series?
I mentioned that Gentry has been playing really well the last couple of weeks, and this one was another good series for her. You mentioned that penalty in was that the Friday game? I mean, yep. That's the Gentry experience, similar to the Thorson experience, where you're going to have that physicality. But she stepped up. She stepped up to the plate here. And so I felt like she was the most dynamic player on the ice for the Huskies this weekend. So I'm going to give it to Gentry.
I mean, it just, I don't know. It's tough. Like, with her and her style of play, but also like I felt overall this whole series was incredibly physical. And I am in favor of allowing checking in women's hockey, and not because I need the physicality of hockey, more so because I think checking adds a little bit more consistency to some of these calls, like to what is body checking and what isn't and what is. And like, I just feel like the consistency of these calls are all over the place when it comes to the physicality of women's hockey. And I think that is a sentence that maybe small-minded people don't understand, that there is physicality in women's hockey, because you can look at the season and there is plenty. But it's just like, sometimes just being a big body out there, you're going to get a lot more calls against you. And I don't know. I thought that was a little, for how rough that game was, her getting called as a roughing penalty. I kind of was like, I don't want to be tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, but I'm like, okay, you're going to try to do what you can to get Ohio State the game. That little bug is still in the back of my head, kind of thinking that. So, but at any rate, yeah, I think Gentry has just been a force out there this weekend, and I thought she definitely was my player of the game as well. So I think that was a easy pick. I think this week on the women's side, and obviously having the points there to back it up with 2 goals on the weekend. So
let's hope we get at least one more performance like that this weekend. And I feel like it's going to be similar. I'm very familiar with the Bulldogs. Not just this year, but you played in the playoffs the last 2 years in addition to this. So every year in the Nadolski era, they've ended their season at Amsoil. Because again, as I mentioned last week, they're playing the final face-off or whatever they call it at Amsoil this year. So I suppose you can just book a hotel room for like 2 weeks.
There you go.
Or a week plus, and stay up there after you beat them this weekend. But yeah, getting that monkey off the back would be a big thing. And I think Gentry's going to be, if that's going to happen, I think Gentry's going to be right in the middle of that. And similar, like we were talking about Thorson and effective contact and all that. It is, I think, the playbook for Gentry is playing that. I agree. I think the calls, I think the refs were in a difficult position because it was such a physical game. So it's like, what do you call?
Like, and then
they know. I think
about hockey and body checking in the women's game, especially, is that you can rub, but you can't check, and you can get in the way, but you can't get in the way too much. And it's just, it's not necessarily that I think the refs are terrible in this instance. I think it's also that the line is just so thin of what is and what isn't that it's so tough to gauge.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I feel like body checking in the women's game should be allowed. I would say fighting should be allowed in the women's game, not in the men's game, only in the women's game. I think they should allow fighting in women's NCAA hockey. So I'll put that on the record.
God, I can't imagine the uproar that would cause, and I would love it. I would savor every moment of it.
Abby Murphy just got some good ideas.
Oh God, yeah, the so-called alpha males.
And I saw it too because my brother texted me a picture of her going to the penalty box. He brought his youngest daughter as like Christmas gift. They got tickets because my niece, who I hate this about her, has gotten a love of the UMD women's hockey team, which I've been trying to talk her out of, but to no avail so far. So he got her tickets to this past Saturday's game at Ritter, and he sent me a photo of Abby Murphy being sent to the penalty box.
Did you see what it was for?
I didn't. What was it for?
Embellishment.
Because my brother didn't really know anything about that, and I said Murphy was, I think, the only player from Minnesota I told him about. And like, yeah, she's like the Bob Probert of women's hockey. Takes all these penalties and scores a bunch of goals.
And
so he got the bit.
Lone goal. Yeah,
she got the bit. And I did see. I've been saying about how well behaved she's been this year because she had like 40 lesser penalty minutes than last year. But I did check; she is still leading the country in penalty minutes this year. So it's all relative, as they say.
Yeah. She got the goal against Minnesota Duluth. First period penalty for body checking, and then later on that period, got an embellishment call. So got a call for hamming up a body check.
Yeah.
So
color me shocked.
Much
not
to
at
Dan
all.
Jacobson's. I bet he was pretty happy to see her get into the box for embellishment.
I think every opposing or every non-Gopher fan in the WCHA is nodding along vigorously.
Right. So, Anything else? I think we got a couple more questions here. More of a comment. Great to see the future of the team score and take over. Screw the upperclassmen. That's from Eric Chester. So that's very happy, I guess, also to be on the Gavin Thorson train, to see the younger guy kind of take over and make his impact there over the weekend. Then Zamora, 7 goals seemed impossible for the weekend. But what is the most important factor that led to the offensive outpour and for us to see again and maybe make a run for the first round of the series? I think a lot of it had to do with, I think a little bit had to do with getting Wiley back. And I think that doesn't make a lot of sense at first when I say that, but I think kind of getting him back and a little more pressure in the offense or in the defense that could, kind of help transition and, have us have the puck a little bit more. I think that combined with just the game plan and the pressure and CC just not being as good as people thought. And I think that also had to be the fact. Now, if we have a 7-goal weekend against Denver, that'll be kind of a different story. And I'll feel like we kind of would turn a corner if that is the case. So I'd love to see it. But it's going to be a different beast here from, facing Colorado College to facing Denver this weekend.
I was trying to even think, like, mentioning Ingram, like, what if we're talking about like lines and like we got the Rosborough line back, like yippee. But like what, I can't even think like what. See, Ingram was being shifted around so much this year. It's like there's not really been a line that he's been on consistently this year.
We've tried everything to get him going.
Right. I would say too, another fact, I thought Gardner was pretty good this weekend, and he's been good.
Gardner was
late.
good. Yeah.
I mean, he's been a bright spot in the dark times here. I mean, he's not gonna make SportsCenter top 10. But again, if we're talking about a team that's now won 1 out of 12 games, he's been a relative bright spot during that time period. And I think he's becoming like more of a playmaker. His player type didn't strike me as playmaker more than it did like finisher. When we got the scouting report from his year in Clarkson, just his frame, his build, I wasn't expecting as much playmaking ability, but it seems to be like his strong suit. I think we saw that a couple of assists this weekend. I thought he was pretty good too.
Gross had 3 assists as well.
Yeah.
All primary assists. And I would be remiss also if I didn't talk about the play where Barrett Hall to Werner Miettinen, who dropped it to Brnovic. I thought that was one extra pass until I realized it was on Brnovic's stick. And I was like, okay, well, if you're going to make one extra pass, have it to Brnovic, who was able to kind of skate around, wait a little bit longer, and catch Mberko out of position to bury it. So that was a good play on Saturday that usually hasn't been the plays that has been falling for the Huskies as of late. So hopefully that good luck kind of continues.
Yes.
Last question we got, country to visit. Is there a country that's number 1 on your list that you'd like to visit, and why?
You can ask us anything, literally. But I'm struggling. Is there like a reason for this question?
No.
But
I think Dan Jacobson.
This was the Dan Jacobson segment.
This was the Dan.
Okay.
I think he's like, God, every week I got to come up with a question for these fools, and he's just stumped.
We love it.
So, or maybe he's planning a trip and taking requests.
She's relying on the Huskies Hockey Podcast for travel recs.
Hey, I saw his most listened to podcast, and we were on that list.
We are influencers in the life of Dan Jacobson. God, that's a horror story if I've ever heard one.
Yeah. And now we're enemies this weekend, so I hope your team loses.
Yeah.
Gascon.
Well, no.
Gastiv.
Well, next weekend we play them, but I suppose they're always enemies.
I mean, yes.
Not a week goes by that I say something disparaging.
Like, I hope Duluth wins.
And what I'm talking about, the women's team plays them this weekend. Then we got the men's team after that. So we'll see a lot of Duluth here. We'll get a lot of that hatred out the next 2 weeks. Do you have a great? I'll say, like, traveling, I've realized, like, the place, the destination, that I like that aspect of travel. It's the getting to the place that I've become less of a fan of.
Sure.
In recent years. And it puts me off of the whole travel aspect in particular. And I'm not an international traveler at all. I've been to Mexico and I've been to Canada, and that's it. So I'm a North American only person, which I wish I was able. I wish I have had, like, my brother's studied abroad for a semester, and he's done much more international travel than I have. He'll go to, he's going to South America this summer. He does a lot. He's much more of a globe trotter than I am. But so like, I went to Hawaii a couple years ago. That was like a 5.5 hour flight, and I felt I was going to die. So, like, I would put, like, Australia has been on my list for a while, but that's like a 20-hour plane ride, and that sounds like torture to me. Like, I would probably have to look into, can I take a boat there instead? Because I would not think that a 20-hour flight I would have to take. It would be like a 3 or 4 day unwinding after the flight. And so I feel like it'd be difficult to enjoy the actual Australia part of the trip. But that's always kind of been on the bucket list. In more of my beer drinking days, I've always said I wanted to go to Belgium, like
sure.
Belgian breweries, Trappist breweries.
I do think a Belgian whiskey is on the list.
There we go. And their waffles. I do love their waffles.
Their waffles. Yep.
So Belgium would be up there. I would not want to go to Paris. I would not want to go to Rome.
I've been to Paris.
That sounds like a musical song. A song from, like, a Cole Porter musical. I bet. I have been to Paris. You'd call it Paris, probably, right?
Oh yeah, it'd definitely be called Paris in a musical.
And it's in general. I feel like it would be weird. I feel like it'd be out of place to go somewhere that didn't speak English. Like, I feel like I'd be intruding. I would either need to brush up on some foreign language. Like, I know some French. It's not like I can speak it conversationally. But I feel like that would be a burden. I'd be like the dumb tourist who's, like, looking at a app on my phone to order food. Like, Mexico is an hour drive for me. I could literally go to Mexico for lunch and come back, have Mexican food in Mexico. But I feel like I would be an idiot to go there and just be like, uno agua numero dos. I would feel like I'm a burden. So that's another reason that I avoid international travel. So I would prefer, like, somewhere that they speak English, so I wouldn't be so stupid or so blatantly stupid. But there's a couple of countries on there. What about you?
Okay. I would say one of my tops on my list is New Zealand. I think that would be absolutely gorgeous to go to.
Which I did not know this until recently. Sorry to cut you off.
Mm-hmm.
Not close to Australia.
Nope.
It's like 1,500 miles from Australia, which is like, that's like farther than, like, cross country, like LA to New York. I was shocked by that. I thought that they were like where Tasmania is in Australia, like right off the coast. But no, they're like clear across the ocean, basically. But yeah, that's another one that in that Australia, in that same category would be New Zealand would be another one that I'd be interested to go to.
I mean, they're not like clear across the ocean, but I
clear
mean,
across the same
it's
ocean,
like,
right?
What?
Clear across the same ocean, right? Like it's not, we're going from the Atlantic to the Pacific, but it's like different stretches of the Pacific. right?
Yeah, correct. I mean, there's a big sea in between Australia and New Zealand, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it just shows like how big the Pacific Ocean is.
You know what?
But
I bet I thought,
but like they're not like right next. Like on maps, sometimes you'll see they're like it'll look like.
see,
they're right
that's
next to
why
each
I
other.
bet I
Yeah.
thought they were close to each other, because on maps, the insets, it's kind of like we thought that Alaska is right off the coast of California based on those inset maps for the U.S. Hawaii, as I mentioned too, that's way the F out there, and kind of crazy that's a state of the U.S. But yeah, New Zealand would be a good one.
And I'm just looking, Sydney to Wellington miles. Yeah, about 1,400 miles separate the two.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Is that just because of your love of the Lord of the Rings?
Partly, yeah. But I think like they have like a whole like walking area, and they have like a whole Hobbiton area too. I think it'll be cool, and just all the shots make it look really gorgeous. And again,
it is a very photogenic country.
Yeah. And then also like Portugal, Spain area. Or maybe even a little bit further into the Mediterranean as well. Kind of area I think would be good. But like Porto or Lisbon in Portugal, I think. I know that's on the Atlantic Ocean, but I think that would be kind of a cool trip. So
you said you'd been to Paris
when I turned 60.
You said you'd been to Paris. What, like, any other like big international like cities that you've been to?
Yeah, I toured Europe in 2002 for band. They had a high school. They called it the Minnesota Ambassadors of Music. So I played 7 concerts across Europe in over a month in 2002, July.
And
2002.
you played the flugelhorn, correct?
Close. The trumpet.
The trumpet. Okay. Okay. And so Paris,
Lou
Rome.
Bega's favorite instrument.
The trumpet or
the trumpet.
Mambo number 5.
Yeah,
I was always a bigger fan of Mambo number 4. Is that I think that's the deeper
accidentally
cut.
Just actually went into Zoot Suit Riot by the Cherry Poppin' Daddies instead of Mambo number 5 by Lou Bega. There was a time that we kind of like to forget about in the late 90s where jazz and like swing kind of had a resurgence.
The Brian Setzer, remember him being
orchestra.
Popular.
Yep.
So what was it? Swingers. Was that Cherry Poppin' Daddies? Was because Swingers has a lot of swing music and they have swing dancing in it. That would have been late 90s as well. So it was definitely a fad. Yeah.
But anyway, it was crazy because I mean the trip almost got canceled because we were flying just 8 months, about 8 months or so after 9/11. So like it was like what do you wear when you're out internationally, just like there was a lot going on at that time, but we still ended up going, and I'm happy that we did. But yeah, we flew into London. And then went down to Paris, a couple days in Paris, a couple days in Switzerland. Took a day trip down to Venice, in Italy.
That'd be that. I'd like to check Venice out at some point.
No. It was not
as hyped up as it.
No,
gondola
and kind of for different. Oh yeah, I mean the gondolas are all. I mean you have to haggle them down like really much, and there's so much trash just floating in the rivers, and it just smelled like fish everywhere you went. And like, not kidding, the scene in Moonraker where the gondola in the car and James Bond is like, there's so many pigeons there, and it's just so that whole square that it's just bird poop everywhere.
It's part of Moonraker set in Venice?
Yeah. I think it's Moonraker.
I don't remember that.
Because it does the
I haven't
pigeon
seen
double
Moonraker
take.
in a long time.
Yeah, that's fine. Moonraker
Not
is
the
kind
best
of
Bond
trash.
film. It's not one of the top most loved Bond films.
No, I would.
I only remember the moon stuff, the sci-fi kind of angle. So I don't remember them being in Venice. Don't Look Now. Have you ever seen that one? Early 70s kind of horror movie with Donald Sutherland. No. That's a Venice set movie. That's a great film.
No, but I mean, everybody throws their garbage out in the river. So, I mean, it's just so kind of floating.
I can get that.
So that's,
so it sounds like you're going like the same route that they did
with Love. I think it ends in Venice.
It sounds like this trip that you made was basically the same itinerary that they did in European Vacation, National Lampoon's European Vacation.
Oh yeah.
It sounds pretty similar. Did you do you couldn't get out the roundabout in London? You just kept going on that all day? Because that's what they did in that film.
Oh, no. We were able to get out of the roundabout. Although the roundabout around the Arc de Triomphe, like our bus got like right in the middle, and we went around it a couple of times before we were able to merge out of there.
It's always good.
And then Austria, a couple days in Austria, a couple days in Germany, and then we flew back.
So you got a good slice. I wish I would have had. I wish I'd have had that experience. I do regret not taking those opportunities. Not that I had those opportunities, but I didn't put myself in the position to have those opportunities in front of me.
I kind of wish. I mean, St. Cloud they really pumped out their study abroad in Anik.
Right.
They had a couple other spots too to study.
Ella's family. She's related to those folks over in the Anik program. Yep. Ella Anik Defender.
So she's got she's the Landon Gentry there in Anik.
Well, and Emma Gentry is also part of the Landon Gentry. So
obviously. So, I mean, that goes without saying. Everybody knows that. So, well, that about does her on this episode. Like I said, it's good to be back. Good to be back in the saddle. Back in the saddle again.
It helps me to take a breath and have someone else talk. And I hope that feeling is shared by our dozens of listeners.
There are dozens of them.
Literally dozens.
So thank you all for listening, and until next time, go Huskies.